So here's what I'm looking at for the rest of 2022 regarding the housing market, and we'll cover a few things. One, are you a buyer? Two, are you a seller? And last but not least, and oftentimes my favorite to talk about, are you an investor in this market? So first let's cover buyers, because for the last 2 years, buyers have really just been getting beaten up in the housing market. Multiple offers on everything, having to pay over list price for a house. You know, while interest rates were really good, buyers were paying an extreme premium for houses, right? So I think it's like, you look at things and you're like, while the market seems good because everybody's doing it, everybody's buying, the frenzy, right? You know, you gotta take a step back and look at the big picture. Low interest rates were driving that market, but buyers were paying $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 over list price for a home. So while their payment might be less, from an equitable position, they're buying a home at the absolute peak of the market. Now what's happening is prices have settled a little bit. They're settling down into what, you know, a lot of the media is saying we're not in a buyer's market, but let me not kid you, like if you're a buyer, it's a great time to be in the market. You know, are you getting a deal right now? It depends on what your opinion of a deal is. Can you get something slightly less than list price? Yes. Are you getting something at a 10 or 20% discount? Probably not. Rates have nearly doubled from where they were last year, which is what put some downward pressure on our market in terms of prices. We're starting to see inventory levels climb. Statistically, they're saying our inventory levels aren't quite where they need to be to call it a quote unquote buyer's market, but you know, they've got a lot to choose from right now. And I think the biggest thing to pay attention to is interest rates where they're at and home prices where they're settling. You know, we often talk about prices and it's like, if you can marry the house and date the rate, you can always refinance down the road. And oftentimes buyers are getting homes for probably, again, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 less than where they could have got it in the peak of the market. And knowing that 18 months, 24 months down the road, they can refinance and save a few $100s a month on their payment and be in a much better equitable position than where they might have been if they bought at the absolute peak. Let's address sellers. Headlines are reading that the market's shifting. While it is no doubt becoming a more balanced market, sellers, the ones who legitimately want to sell, are still in a good position. I think I always tell people the best homes are still the best homes. They sell the fastest. You know, right now, sellers just need to do a little more preparation than they might have had to do over the last couple years. But I think of this, because a lot of sellers are frustrated because they're like, maybe I should have sold 4 or 5 months ago. But the point I often make to them is like, where were you gonna go? If you're gonna sell at the absolute peak of the market and then turn around and buy at the peak of the market, you know, unless you're cashing in and you're walking away from the table and you're taking all your chips and you're gonna go stay with a friend, a family member, or you know, you're fortunate enough to maybe have another house to go to, it's fake money, right? In sense of like, I gotta take this money at the peak and go reinvest it something in the peak. And so now I think it's like, well, prices have settled. Sellers who legitimately wanna sell are still in a great position. You know, you may have to do a little more preparation on your home in terms of getting things ready, you know, paint, carpet, a little bit of staging. Do we need to do any repairs or renovations to help you get top dollar? But still an extremely good market for realistic sellers who have to get somewhere else. Now, if you're a seller who's just testing the market, or you saw what your neighbor's house sold for 4, 5, 6 months ago, and you're after that price, it's probably not a great time to sell. But for most sellers that have a destination they need to get to, or they're finally ready to sell their home and go buy something else, maybe they're gonna upgrade or downsize. For the longest time, those sellers haven't been able to really make a move, and now they're able to. So I think it's a healthy market. You know, it's leveling the playing field a little bit, so it's not in one person's extreme favor or another. And I think that's the thing to really consider is like, if I was a seller 6 months ago, could I have gotten the most I would have ever been able to get for my house? Absolutely. Where was I gonna go? If I had to be a buyer in this same market, I'm gonna have to go get beat up on the buy side. If I'm moving to another part of the country, they've all been experiencing the same thing we've been experiencing. And we've had clients that have sold for job relocations and things like that. and they get to their destination and they're experiencing, the same thing over the years or the last couple years in terms of multiple offers and everything. So I think it's nice for people to be able to have options now. And it's really more about slowing down, doing a little bit more strategy planning, and really getting a full understanding of when you sell, where are you going, right? And putting together the best plan to help you get there. Let's talk about the last person who might be in this market, and that'd be an investor. And I don't mean like these cash buyers that you see advertising. I mean like your typical everyday, mom and pop investor, right? People who are buying real estate to build long-term wealth, or maybe you have a property that's got a ton of equity in it and you want to go buy another one, but you don't necessarily want to sell this one, or you've saved up some money and you want to get into real estate investing. Is this a good time for that? It depends. That's my answer. I buy properties in every market. I own rental properties, and I look at dollar cost averaging. If you're always going to buy in every market, then this is a good market. Knowing that for the last 2 years, even investors were paying more for properties than they'd probably like. We were looking in other markets, other states for opportunities because it didn't really make sense here. And now as prices have started to settle, more inventories come on the market, I've got options again. If you're an investor, you can buy things now that will still cash flow, knowing that down the road you can refinance and get a better rate if you're putting 20% down or something like that. From an investor standpoint, I think it's a good market to invest if you're going to do it for the long term, with the understanding that I'm gonna leverage bank money and get a loan on this property, and I'm going to get a good tenant in there that's gonna pay rent, that's gonna cover my mortgage, and down the road I can refinance and create more cash flow. Now, I wouldn't buy anything that doesn't cash flow, doesn't at least cover the mortgage and any expenses that you might have with the property. You can kind of start to get into some dangerous territory there if we start to see any more of a further dip in prices. But as long as you're covering your payment, covering all your expenses, and you have the long-term vision of rates will come down eventually, and you can create some more cash flow at that point, I think it's also a good time to look at some investments. So wrapping all this up, whether you're a buyer, whether you're a seller, or whether you're possibly looking to invest in real estate to create long-term wealth, overall, I think the rest of 2022 is gonna be a rather healthy market. Here's what I would recommend. Avoid the media, don't read headlines. The media does more to terrify than to clarify. So the best thing you can do is reach out to a good real estate agent, do some planning, and really put some thought into what you wanna do to accomplish your goals for the rest of 2022.